brought out during this whole testimony is that it's a general policy and not an isolated incident. We're trained from basic training, AIT and OCS, to kill, and that's what we're out there to do. It is not the fault of Lieutenant Calley. It is not the fault of the infantryman in his platoon. It would be impossible with our background to go into a village and kill a woman and child unless we looked at those people as non-humans. And because of the service and because of the military establishment, that's how we look at the Vietnamese.
My name is Joe Galbally. I'm 23. I served as a PFC in the 198th Light Infantry Brigade from October 67 till April of 68 when I was medevac to Japan. My testimony will deal with the gassing of hungry children, the use of scout dogs on innocent civilians, the indiscriminate leveling of villages, killing of livestock, and pollution of water supply. In other words, they made it totally impossible for these people to live in their ancestral homelands again.
My name's John Beitzel. I'm 21.
This is a picture of me taken while I was in Vietnam, from January of 1969 to January of 1970.
I served in the 11th Brigade, 4th of the 21st Infantry. I served as a sergeant and a squad leader. I worked in Quang Ngai Province. I worked around My Lai and Duc Pho. I've witnessed the mutilation of bodies. This consisted of cutting off ears, plucking out teeth for souvenirs.
This picture was taken after a firefight. They're plucking out a gold tooth that he had in his mouth. At this point, they had already cut off his ears, and they had already cut off the ears of a couple other NVA that we had killed. At the time it happened, it didn't even seem like aberrant behavior. The reason that things like this can occur is because of the dehumanization process that we go through during our training. Also, there were officers present. They didn't stop it or say anything about it. This is a prisoner being brought in. He was a VC suspect. He was beat on the way in, and he was cut with a bayonet on his back and on his chest. This is where he was being held at. It's a very small enclosed area. They couldn't even stretch out in this area. It was about 2.5 feet high. The only thing they could do was squat. There were very often maybe 4 or 5 or 6 people held in this little small area. In this picture, the prisoner is being interrogated. The field telephone in the foreground is what they use to torture him. It's a generator type of phone where you hook up the wires to different parts of the body, like the ears, the tongue, the fingers, and then you crank up the field phone, and this produces an electrical shock. He was tortured to the point where he just conked out. Things like this happen all the time.
Common things in my company were throwing grenades into civilian bunkers. We once threw a white phosphorus grenade, and a lot of times I never thought people were in these bunkers, but an old man came out when we threw this white phosphorus grenade in, and he was all singed and burned.
This picture was taken about 10 miles from My Lai. One of the first things we did when we got to the Ville was to chase the people out of their homes and herd them into the center of the Ville. This was a VC suspect Ville. There were no military-age people in the Ville. All the people that we rounded up were civilians. There were women and children and old people. They would usually grab all their belongings because very often GIs would then commence to burn down the hooches. We didn't burn them down in this Ville, but we burned about 90% of the villas that we went through. And then the people would either be left there or sent off to relocation camps.
One particular operation was a 3-day operation where we took all the villagers out of the village, put them in a barbed wire compound, interrogated them, tortured some of them, beat some of them, and then we had supplies brought in, Bangalore torpedoes, all types of explosives to just level the Ville and just get rid of anything, make it look like there was never a Ville there. My CO once fired at a group of kids merely because they came up to our hill to collect sea rations. We were also ordered to fire gas grenades at them. There was a big pressure for body count. We had a very low body count in our company, and we had a lot of pressure come down from the battalion commander to the company commander and down onto us. We were given new incentives to get a higher body count. such as a 6-pack of beer or a case of soda, and sometimes a 3-day pass, you know, for the amount of body count we had. One incident, we were working with another company in our battalion, very close with them. Both companies were on the same radio frequency. Came over the radio, the other company told us to pass on to our higher command that they had a body count of 13. So we passed it on up. They were too far to have radio contact. So we passed it on up. Then later, one of our platoons went into the Ville, and they said, we can confirm the body count of that company. Said there's 9 women, 3 children, and 1 baby.
This is a patrol in a free fire zone. A free fire zone is an area which is suspected of being used by the VC or the NVA. Anyone in a free fire zone is shot at, whether they're man, woman, or child, or whether they're armed or not. These things that I'm telling about, relocation of villages, burning villages, torturing, recon by fire, free fire zone,
They were all common. They weren't isolated. We did them wherever we went.
On several occasions, one in particular, we set up on a hill which is strategically important, I suppose. And there was a village at the bottom of the hill. We went back down to the village. It was about an 8-man patrol. We entered a hooch. These people are aware of what American soldiers do to them, so naturally they try to hide the young girls. We found one hiding in a bomb shelter in sort of the basement of her house. She was taken out and raped by 6 or 7 people in front of her family, in front of most of the villagers. This wasn't just one instance. This is just the first one that I can remember, but I know of 10 or 15 of such instances at least. The gentleman on my left can corroborate my testimony, as we were together the whole time, served in the same squad in the same company.
At the time most of this happened, our platoon leader was a Mormon minister. He's dead now, so he can't really be found out and questioned. But when he got there, he was pretty well high character man because he was a minister. And by the time he left, well, by the time he got killed, rather, he was condoning everything that was going on because it was a part of policy. If nobody tells you that it's wrong, then you do it anyway. And this is how it changed him around.
I did not see this personally, but later on, the guys were bragging about it. Some of the other men, they had, in Vietnamese, yelled down the bunker, "Is anyone there?" And simultaneously, while they're yelling this, they drop a grenade in. I went up to the bunker later. There was I think what was a little boy and a little girl killed, and there was an old lady in there. And the feelings that I had were rather mixed. I was, rather shocked, because they were bragging about this. They thought it was rather humorous. But at the same time, it seemed to be more or less something that was socially acceptable. We weren't really, concerned that, these were little kids, but that what we were concerned with is that they had slanted eyes, were Vietnamese, and that was enough to justify it. It was just, well, that's war. I had written a friend of mine that was also in the Army, in Nam, at that time, and I told him about this incident. And I'd like to read you his reply and show you that, this was not only a feeling among our company, among myself, but universally feelings of the men, Americans over there. What he said was, "You guys are killing off kids, huh? Ain't no big thing. They're the same. I hate all these gooks, VC or not. I really feel ashamed of myself. I find it embarrassing to admit that I am a Vietnam veteran. And this was only, one of many incidences. It was nothing as huge as My Lai, but it was still 3 human lives."
My primary reason for getting involved in this testimony was because of Jim Weber.
He had called me up last Thursday night and said, he's from Pittsburgh, he said he was coming up to Detroit to testify. He gave me a rundown on what he planned on telling the people, and everything he said was true. And, you know, I had to support him. I told him I would. I'd collaborate his story. I just felt that now was the time for me to do my part, to let people know how I feel, how Jim feels, and how many, many of us feel. That was about it.
I'm the Jim that he's talking about. This had bothered me for a long time. Prior to going into service, I was manager of a shoe store. It's a chain across the country, and I had a relatively easy job, well-paying job. And so I imagine I would be a flag waver because I had a little bit of money, and I wouldn't care about, you know, I had a racist attitude. Of course, we all still have racist attitudes. I didn't care about anyone else, you know, I cared about myself. And I got drafted into the Army. And it made quite a big change because I was waving flags all the time that I was on my train, you know, down to South Carolina where I got my murder training. And okay, I went in there, and my complete moral worth was completely destroyed. I mean, I was a worthless human being. The worst thing that you can be in the military is to be called a civilian. And so they had to completely re-socialize us, which they were very effective at doing. I didn't agree with everything, but I went along with it. Then I was sent on to advanced genocide training down at Fort Polk, Louisiana. And this is where I got, you know, this is where I started to hate anything that wasn't exactly like me, anything that wasn't a fighting machine. I was, you know, gooks, you've heard that mentioned here for 3 days, but I don't think you really know what it means unless you know how much hate is instilled in one person, how much really guilt. I mean, like if you're not white and 21, you know, forget it. And this is what they do. This is what they do. They turn you into a fighting machine. And it's so hideous, some of the things. I mean, we've gone into barracks, you know, we've had like pictures of, well, they weren't pictures, they were like cartoons with slant eyes, you know, everything was a slant eye, and these little hats on the top, you know, and these were the people that you were hating. They were positioned right above the gun racks, you know, no uniform or anything, just simply the profile of one, or maybe the full face of another. By the time I had left Fort Polk, Louisiana, I wanted to kill my mother, or anyone that wasn't, you know, completely in agreement with me that I wanted to just kill everything, you know. It's really bad because I had been trained, and I knew I was an effective fighting machine and that I was going to kill everything in my path. I went over to Vietnam with the same attitude, and it lasted for about 1 day, and from then on it was all downhill. But even the people that were on our side, man, even the people that were fighting with us were still lower class, second-class citizens. You know, since there weren't that many, they were a complete different race. We would call them niggers, you know, in this country. Over there we call them gooks. You know, it's the same thing. They're second-class citizens. It's a complete racism thing. And it's really hideous. You know, there's a number of things. And then when I come out of the service, and I come back, and I would go into the bars where my friends used to loaf, and you know, I would hear these same things going on that went on before I left. But now things had changed for me, see, because like I had seen what was going on. I had firsthand, you know, I had witnessed these things. And I wasn't getting it from the Pittsburgh Press or the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette or anything like that, man. I had seen it.
I was PFC in Vietnam with Company A, 3rd to 21st, 196th Light Infantry Brigade. And few people may have heard about it. It was in August of '69 that they refused to fight. And I have some rather bitter feelings. I've seen some of the things some other people have talked about, but I've also seen mistreatment of GIs by the higher command because they wouldn't produce a body count. After I had joined my company, we went in on a stand down, which most people had been out in the field for 2.5 months. And we got into a fight with a recon platoon, which our colonel didn't like, so he chopped us back out into a hot LZ and some of us had faulty weapons that were never replaced like they were supposed to be when we were in. And there's about 6 people at least that got wounded. And from that time on, it was rumored that the reason we never received our mail only came in sometimes once a week, and we never got any hot food or resupplied, maybe once a month, was because our colonel was down on us because we didn't produce a body count. And one time when we were being resupplied, he flew in and started yelling at our CO, and he said, "I don't want any more of your goddamn prisoners. I want a body count." And after that, we were issued orders to, we were told we were in a free fire zone, and anybody we saw that was over 12 years of age, or we thought, and was a male, was to be considered the enemy and engaged as such. And I was told that the battalion commander before that had told the troops not to fire at anybody unless they were seen with weapons. To me, this is kind of a drastic change, and it shows the difference in policy just between the field grade officers as they come in. And it was rumored that this guy was with the 9th Division, and he volunteered for an infantry unit to, as they put it, to make rank. And we were harassed, it seemed like, from every day on, for not having a body count, until we were finally sent out on the last mission, in which we were told it was a 1-day assault. And I got wounded on the 3rd day, and my own squad had only 2 meals of sea rations and 3 days between us, and we had to risk our necks to get water. And in one case, there were 2 people that lived for 8 hours, and they wouldn't bring in medevacs to take them out, and they both died. And those were the 2 bodies that this company was supposed to retrieve when they refused to go back out again. And we were ordered to assault on line a bunker complex by a major that was back on LCD Center, when most of us didn't have any food or water, and the things that we did have were hogged by the TOC Center. And our commander was judged by most of us as being in a state of shock. He didn't know what he was doing. He just issued orders to do it. And everybody in our company felt that since this guy had only 3 weeks in the country and was obviously in a state of shock, his orders shouldn't be obeyed. But yet we were told we'd be court-martialed or even shot if we didn't obey his orders. The people that got killed in those 3 days, which were at least 9 that I saw, and I was one of those that got wounded, were totally senseless. And we didn't feel that just going out and indiscriminately killing people help matters any. I just don't think it's right to draft somebody and send them to an undeclared war that has moral connotations that are mostly bad, and subject them to just the mental treatment that some of these guys go through. And I think a lot of them feel that it's more the fault of their country than the people they're fighting against. That's all I'd like to say for right now.
My name is Kurt Wintergratsky. I was Spec 4 in the Marical Division 11th Brigade, 59th Scout Dog. And I don't know what to say. I've been here for 3 days, listening to, people come up here and tell whatever war stories they have and whatnot. And as I said, I worked for Scout Dog, and I worked with different companies of different battalions in our area. And I got to rap with the guys, and I just know that, and we learned somewhere along the line that a dink was less than a person. And these things go on, they really happen. I don't know how to, man, I can't talk, I can't tell you people incidences or whatever you want to hear. I'm just here because it goes on and somebody's got to do something. And here I am,
My name's Gary Keys. I was Spec 4, and I was assigned to E-Troop, 1st Cav, Americal Division. I guess the worst thing I really saw over there was mistreatment of civilians. Now, most of this went on when we had convoys running from Duck Foe to Cy Wind. Such things as tear gassing villages, throwing spent .50 caliber rounds at civilians. Sometimes there were instances where children were reported with split skulls from a thrown .50 caliber round. You can get killed just throwing them. Running down hooches, doing donuts and rice patties, destroying their crops. The worst thing I ever really saw was we were on a mission. We were taking some grunts out on a beachhead, and there were some fishermen out in the ocean. And a couple of our sergeants thought it would be a good sport to use them as target practice. So they swung their .50 calibers around, and they just shot the shit out of them. For no reason, I guess. And I'm no better. A lot of times on mine sweep, we'd pass a lake, also running from Duck Foe to Cy Wind. And there'd be fishermen in this lake. And since we had nothing better to do, we'd fire M79 rounds at them, 16 rounds. Sometimes M60s, we'd call for a test fire and, you know, sort of aim their way, hoping we'd hit somebody. I can't really say why we did it. Maybe it was because we were taught to hate him. I was told by my own lieutenant, well, he saw me wearing one of these bracelets. He asked me why I was wearing it. I told him, I said, well, a Vietnamese boy gave it to me. I said he was a token of his friendship, really. He liked me and I liked him. We gave each other gifts, I suppose. And he told me to take it off. And of course I didn't agree. I didn't want to take it off. I didn't feel I should. But he told me these are the same people. He says, why do you accept gifts from the same people that go out and put mines in the roads and blow up your buddies? And he told me if I didn't take it off, he'd go to more, maybe drastic measures. I don't know. He just dismissed me. But I don't know. I don't want to give any blood stories or nothing. I just can't do it. I just want you to know that the people over there aren't really being treated as human beings. They're being treated as slaves, let's say. Maybe not even slaves. I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know what to say. I just wanted you to know about it.